Design, comparisons, display, camera, software, gaming, and finally benchmarks. This is my unboxing and extremely detailed review of the Redmi K30 Ultra. This marks Xiaomi's 10-year anniversary, and in turn, they have priced the K30 Ultra at the same exact price as their first ever smartphone, the Xiaomi Mi 1, that being 2,000 Chinese RMB, which works out to around 22,000 rupees and $289 US. You get a Type-C to 3.5mm jack in the box, as well as a soft shell case, and we also get a Type A to Type C cord, of course, to match that of the charger block, which has this wonderful orange accent. It has 33-watt charging capability within the device itself, and you get that bundled in the box. This is indeed the mint green version of the Redmi K30 Ultra. You can also get it in midnight white or black, and it has this wonderful holographic looking logo at the bottom. I'm not sure if you guys can pick up on that, but it looks absolutely fantastic. I'm a big fan of this color of the phone, this mint green color, but it is extremely glossy, which makes for an extreme fingerprint magnet phone. But fear not, we do have that wonderful transparent TPU case in the box, which we can slap on, and that then prevents all those incredibly harsh fingerprint smudges on the back. It feels pretty neat and handy, though I wouldn't really recommend it as a daily cover. We have a power button on the right hand side, as well as a non-split volume rocker, an IR blaster at the top, which is interesting, and of course a pop-up selfie cam, which has been embodied within the phone itself. We have a dual SIM tray at the bottom, though there is no room for an SD card over here. We also have a USB Type-C port over here, though it only supports USB 2.0 speeds. We have a 4,500 mAh battery, slightly smaller than that of the K30 Pro, and the same 33-watt charging as the K30 Pro Zoom Edition. We don't have a headphone jack, the predecessors of this phone do, and we do have dual stereo speakers, which was lacking in its previous phones. We also have that insanely strange Oreo camera bump at the back. It really protrudes a lot and looks quite different to other phones on the market. Like I said, it protrudes quite a bit, but then again, most phones these days do. All camera bumps do protrude these days due to the fact that they want to try keep the actual phone itself quite slim, and this little camera wobble that you see on a flat surface, it can be prevented by using a cover. If you compare it to the regular vanilla K30, it is a little bit heavier. It is also heavier than the OnePlus 8 Pro, and the OnePlus 8 Pro is a spec monster, the flagship from OnePlus, so it's kind of strange how the K30 Ultra is so darn heavy, but it is slightly lighter than that of the S20 Ultra. It looks absolutely stunning on the back, but what about the display? Well, we have a 20:9 aspect ratio, 6.67-inch AMOLED display with 16 million colors, exactly the same as its predecessors, Full HD with 395 pixels per inch. Its peak brightness can reach 1,200 nits. We have HDR10+, and finally 120 Hz refresh rate panel. If you take a look at the color accuracy on all devices over here, the vanilla K30 on the left hand side is indeed IPS, and looking at the phones on the right hand side, the OnePlus 8 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra, it's pretty much on par when it comes to brightness, so that's really good to see, and the color range is pretty fantastic too. But we want to see 120 Hz. We finally got it. It was skipped in the K30 Pro launch, and taking a look at the difference between 60 and 120, bear in mind that you can only choose these two options. So you can't choose 90, you're either stuck to 60 or 120, which kind of sucks in my opinion, because if you want more battery life, I would probably opt for 90 since there's not that much of a difference. But you can definitely see quite a big difference here between 60 and 120, so hats off to Xiaomi for including 120 Hz at a 2,000 RMB price point. Comparing it to other 120 Hz panels, remember the K30 all the way on the left is an IPS panel, the other two are indeed AMOLED as well. It doesn't actually look quite as smooth as the OnePlus 8 Pro and S20 Ultra's panels when using slow motion over here to record 120 Hz refresh rate on the screen. We also have a couple different color schemes over here as well as making the phone a bit brighter outdoors and darker indoors with that incredible dark mode, which we find in most AMOLED smartphones these days. We also have an always-on display, which we have seen from Xiaomi in the past couple years, and it looks absolutely fantastic. They haven't really changed too many animations, though I like to stick with the simplest one. But in order to use these features, you need to unlock your phone, and in doing so, you can use the under-display optical fingerprint sensor, and when comparing it to the OnePlus 8 Pro, it is quite a bit slower, and when you just struggle to find Face Unlock, there it is. We do have face unlock here, which is awesome out the box. We can use that selfie pop-up camera over there, which is really fantastic. Though the one drawback is that you cannot just unlock straight into the phone. You actually have to swipe up, much like the iPhone 11 Pro Max, which makes it a lot slower than other Android phones out there. Though it is pretty snappy if you do a regular speed test by putting your face in the way of both cameras at the same time. We do have different LED color effects, which are awesome, and we also have sound effects, but it was just way too soft in order to show you guys. So here is the wonderful pop-up camera, and fear not that if you do decide to drop it, it will retract, much like the OnePlus 7 Pro. And we have a 20 megapixel f2.2 pop-up selfie camera in the front. This is exactly the same as its predecessor, the K30 Pro and K30 Pro Zoom Edition. Taking a selfie, it looks nice, clear, and crisp. However, there is some edge detection when taking a portrait shot. This is TechNick recording a 1080p 30 FPS video on the Redmi K30 Ultra. It is completely capped at 1080p and 30 FPS. Let me know what you guys think of the video and audio quality when using the K30 Ultra's selfie cam. By the way, it is extremely hot here in Shanghai. Just for your information, the cameras at the back of the K30 Ultra are exactly the same as the regular K30 Pro. The Zoom Edition actually had a telephoto lens in there, so this is kind of a step back if you ask me. It isn't actually a true Ultra. Nevertheless, the ultra wide looks fantastic. The main looks great, 64 megapixels. That is binned 4 times to 16 megapixels, looks fantastic. 2 times zoom, 5 times and 10 times are all digital, so it looks absolutely shockingly terrible up close. Don't zoom in with this phone, guys. A binned regular shot on a depth effect field over here looks great, and shooting over to portrait, not too much edge detection over there. And we also have that wonderful macro mode, which is also a great little extra. We have 1080p at 60 frames per second, which is great, and we do have gyro electronic image stabilization over here. However, since we are lacking a Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 or 855 processing chip, we do not have 4K 60, so we're stuck to 4K 30 FPS because we are stuck to a Dimensity 1000 Plus chipset by MediaTek. We also have 1080p 30 frames per second ultra wide. Unfortunately, it's also capped at 30 FPS, and 4K ultra wide is also capped at 30 FPS, though they all have electronic image stabilization. Xiaomi has always been using this stabilization mode called Steady Video, so it is off right now, and we can only enable it when using 1080p at 30 FPS in ultra wide, and it looks pretty great. Things are extremely stable on the K30 Ultra. So there's also this front and back video feature if you guys are interested in that. Well, my voice was a little delayed in that video. Nevertheless, we do have MIUI 12 skinned on top of Android 10, which is great. Hopefully we get Android 11 soon down the line. We also have access to Google services and the Google Play Store if you download it separately. And I must say that this MIUI 12 feels like a dumbed down version of the MIUI 12 that I used on my Xiaomi Mi 10 Pro. It's kind of similar to the MIUI 11 that I saw on the K30 Pro Zoom Edition that I had. We have a few little neat features in the phone itself that we've seen on previous Xiaomi phones, such as split screen. But the most important thing here is that the haptics feel like they've improved. They actually are really quite good. But the important thing here is hardware. So we do have a Dimensity 1000 Plus chipset made by MediaTek. It is running on 7nm technology. And when you're using these nebula wallpapers, it kind of stutters a bit with the software. You have to change to a static wallpaper if you want things to be a bit smoother, a little bit gimmicky. Hopefully this gets fixed with a future software updates. We have Game Turbo over here, which is pretty cool, and we're going to pair that with, I would say, Dolby Atmos, or maybe a Xiaomi sound effect thing for the speakers, so I can show you guys the sound of these dual stereo speakers. But unfortunately, it is lacking in this phone. We're going to first start off with Bullet Force over here, a game that has no frame per second cap. Unfortunately, we are only seeing 60 FPS, which absolutely sucks with a 120 Hertz smartphone. Now let's go ahead and listen to those dual stereo speakers. Another game with no FPS cap is Dead Trigger 2 over here, though we are limited the graphics setting to high and the FPS setting to 60, which really sucks. So you're paying for this incredible new upgrade on the Redmi K series phone, 120 Hz, but you're capping at 60 FPS. It really sucks that we're stuck on 60 FPS even with a game such as Real Racing 3, which literally has no cap in the FPS department either. But nevertheless, the Dimensity 1000 Plus chipset should be able to perform decently well in a benchmark run. So we're going to start off here with AnTuTu. I showed you guys the battery percent and degrees Celsius of that and the CPU at the start. We're going to compare it at the end. I'm just speeding through AnTuTu version 8.4.3 over here, and here are the results of the battery drain. Minus 5% in drain, pretty similar to a regular Snapdragon 865 phone. We jumped up by 2.7 degrees in Celsius, which is exactly the same as the jump up you would see in the battery degrees Celsius of a Snapdragon 865 powered smartphone. But something seriously strange happened with the CPU over here when measuring the temperature using AnTuTu. Our score here came to just shy of 480,000 points, and the Redmi K30 Pro Zoom Edition got 590,000. This is called the Ultra, but it performs worse than that. So I'm not hating on the Redmi K30 Ultra, I'm just hating on the name being Ultra because it kind of implies that it is better than the Pro version. Nevertheless, it did indeed beat the average scores of the Snapdragon 855 Plus, 855, 765G, which you actually see on the OnePlus Nord, by the way, and 730G, which you would see on the vanilla Redmi K30 4G or 5G smartphone. After AnTuTu, I usually test out Geekbench 5, and as you guys can see, as soon as we hit that 100% mark, the app just gets killed by the phone. I'm not sure if it has to do with software or the hardware of the device, but it doesn't record anything in the history. I did test this out about 6 times. I'm showing you guys the 2 times in this video over here, and we also went ahead and tested out Compute Benchmark over here, testing out the GPU, and the same thing happened. A bit of a bummer. Hopefully this gets fixed in the future. The Redmi K30 Ultra truly warms my heart, but it stabs me in the back at the same time. It has an incredible sheet of specifications, but at the same time falls short of what it promises its users. Of course, it has an incredible starting price of under 300 USD, which you would never find a 120 Hz AMOLED smartphone at. However, you cannot really use that wonderful 120 Hz display when playing games, which is one of the main reasons someone would purchase a phone with a high refresh rate. When putting it beside the competition out there, whether it's a cheaper phone or a more expensive flagship phone out there, it can't really stand on its own 2 feet. It's really hard for me to recommend the Redmi K30 Ultra to its predecessors, the K30 Pro and K30 Pro Zoom Edition, but like I said, this is cheaper than that. So if you're scratching about for extra cash for your next smartphone, this just might be it.